Halo doesn't feel like Halo anymore. There's a sentiment that's really been shared for, to be honest with you, the better part of 10 to 12 years now. And it's one that I agree with, but probably not for the reasons you might think. Because on a surface level, people like to mark the decline of the Halo series as when 343 took over for Bungie. And I think that is true, but I think it goes so much deeper than that for one of gaming's most iconic IPs, which is now just fallen on some hard times. Hopefully with something good to look forward to in the future. But the question is why? I feel like there's so much to really uncover there, because going back, Combat Evolved was arguably, obviously I played it retrospectively, I'm only 23, so a little bit before my time, but you know, it's regarded as the most important shooter in console history. I think in many people's eyes, it revolutionized what an FPS could be when a player has a controller in their hands in terms of the core gameplay systems. So many of them you see in the games today, in modern FPSs today, and it's why Combat Evolved, even now, from a purely gameplay perspective, holds up so well. All of these things are so important in terms of the gameplay, but I think the most influential thing that Combat Evolved brought to the table in terms of its design philosophy that carried through most of Halo and so many other FPSs and games of that era in terms of multiplayer was a prime focus on connectivity and community. You know, because at the time, Xbox Live and online play didn't exist. The only way to play multiplayer with Halo was through LAN parties or through split screen, so with local play. So friends would have to come over, bring their Xboxes and controllers with them, and you'd play under one network. And, you know, Bungie and Microsoft really pushed that at the time and sort of encouraged players to do that. And the result was a sort of culture, a subculture just specific to Halo, where community and cooperative play and in terms of sharing experiences together became the core driving tenet behind what made Halo Halo. You know, it wasn't necessarily about, you know, the cool enemies, the interesting story and characters. It was never about that. It was about the connectivity and community. And that carried over into Halo 2, the sequel, which for the first time brought online play. But Bungie never wavered from their original principles. The focus remained on bringing people together through the multiplayer. And of course, it was a sequel which, although was made in such a short period of time and there's plenty of stories on its development cycle, by some miracle ended up being an incredible game, you know, in terms of its campaign and its multiplayer too. It brought, you know, new features like dual wielding, and it was regarded by many people as the greatest Halo game of all time, though that's a sentiment some might disagree with, right? But as I said, the most important thing was this inclusion of online multiplayer. So it was just leveling up that system and enforcing, you know, community. And that was a novel thing at the time. It was revolutionary, right? Being able to play with your friends across networks. It's something we take for granted now, right? In any multiplayer game. But in Halo 2, it wasn't just brought to the table. It was really actively encouraged and enforced. And I think that same sentiment was what made Halo 3 the most successful of them all. Because not only did they, of course, have online multiplayer, which was the norm at this point in time as the Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3 launched, but the most important features that Bungie went the extra mile to go and add that no other game or studio had ever done before in that capacity. Namely, I think two important things: the theater mode, which was revolutionary at the time, again, something we completely take for granted now, which was the ability to replay matches and clip up pieces of content. Like if you hit a crazy shot with the sniper or the BR and they hit a crazy feed, you could record that, go back on the match, record it and show your friends. And that was such an important feature in terms of bringing people together, as I said before, that core tenet. And of course, you had, you know, other game modes. Most importantly, though, the file share system and Forge mode. So people could create their own maps, game modes and experiences. You know, obviously Halo Reach was my first entry into the series, but a lot of those mini games that were popular in 3 made their way into Reach. So stuff like Duck Hunt, Fat Kid, Hot Pursuit, you know, those of you who played these experiences know exactly what I'm talking about and likely had so many incredible memories with them. And that's because Bungie and Microsoft really pushed the idea of community. I know I keep saying it, but it's what made Halo Halo. That's what Halo is to me and so many other people. on top of, you know, the cool art style, the great, incredible music which you're listening to now, and so many of the details, I always stand by this idea of community and connectivity was the most important. And of course, alongside ODST, which was a spin-off title, which I've talked about on this channel before, we had Reach, which I just mentioned, which was Bungie's final foray into the series, which of course carried and reinforced so many of those core principles. And from then on, after Bungie's departure to go on and work on Destiny, which of course I'm a hugely passionate fan of, and I've spoken about at length of my love for that. But irrespective of Destiny, 343 took over the mantle at this point. And many people's grievances with Halo 4, 5, and Infinite have always been alongside things like the art form, in terms of its visual design being quite, you know, ugly, despite the incredible graphics for the time. The design of Master Chief, Cortana, the campaign choices in terms of writing, or the enemy choices like the use of Forerunners, which weren't particularly fun or engaging to fight. I think they're all valid criticisms and definitely add to why Halo 4 in particular was, you know, critically panned to some extent. But for me, it would always be the fact that 343 never understood or forgot about the core principles of Halo in terms of connectivity and community. And I think the most damning example of that was when 5 came out, was that there was no split screen. No split screen co-op. Now, that might have been the norm in many ways for a lot of FPS titles at the time, but that doesn't matter when you have an IP like Halo, which was built off of that, built on the idea of playing together with friends, online or local, and you remove that, you got a significant portion of that player base, you alienate everyone. And I think that was, in my opinion, the nail in the coffin at the time for 343. And I very much lost interest in the IP as I focused on Destiny and, you know, countless other gaming experiences. And it wasn't until Infinite where this sort of debate really sparked again for me, because I think in a lot of ways, Halo Infinite did so much right. It really did. It was so close to being a really incredible game. And I say that because I think from a gameplay perspective, Halo Infinite is the best playing Halo that's ever existed. And I will forever credit 343 for building something and really listening to fans in that regard, in trying to make the game more like it used to be, because Halo 5 was never that. Halo 4 differed in many ways too. Infinite not only felt modern, it felt updated, but it felt like bringing Halo 3 into the modern day. That's how I would always describe it. And in that regard, I think they did it so right. The campaign was damn fun to play. Being able to grapple hook a fusion coil as Master Chief, hit a grav lift, and slam dunk it like you're LeBron James on an unsuspecting grunt, you know, that's magical. It really is fun to play. You know, it reminds me of something like Doom Eternal, which the core gameplay loop is just so incredibly good that it keeps you coming back. And that's why I finished Halo Infinite. But outside of that, I think there's a lot of problems with it. I think the open world never needed to be a thing. I think that was a strange design decision based off of pressure to fit in. I think that was what was the downfall of Halo 4 in a lot of ways. Or in Halo 5, you know, trying to be more like Call of Duty with a class system, etc., etc. It just didn't. It wasn't Halo. I'll bring that back. It wasn't Halo. And I think in Infinite, some of those tenets still remain, like being an open world, trying to ride that wave. Didn't need to be. That's not what Halo ever was. And of course, on the other details, they learned their mistakes just too late. I think if Halo Infinite had more time to cook, it could have been perfect, because at launch, there was no co-op campaign. There was no split screen campaign either. There was split screen multiplayer, sure. So that at least they had that. But there was no Forge mode at launch. No Forge mode in a Halo game at launch, which in my opinion is the root of all creativity from the Halo community. Was creating custom experiences for each other, and not having that in a new mainline IP, which you've hyped up and put so much push behind it. It was meant to be the Series X's real flagship title, and you denied everyone one of the most core tenets of what made the Halo games great. I never understood it. And I know they've added it in hindsight, and I've been playing Infinite recently, and it's why I wanted to make this video, because now it's in quite a good place for the most part, but the damage is done. It's too late. And you know, now, you know, 343 have rebranded as Halo Studios, and they've moved from their in-house engine to Unreal Engine 5, which I think done right is a good decision. I just really hope that they finally understand what made Halo perfect and don't rush things. I think if Infinite had more time to cook, it could have been that. It could have been the next-gen Halo game we were always asking for. But until I see you know, them really push for those core tenets of Halo in their next release, I think I might have to hold my tongue for now on an IP which I love and have so many great memories with, and I'm sure so many of you do too. I can only cross my fingers that we get something really, really special down the line. And they have talked about the upcoming Unreal 5 tests and stuff like that. I'm cautiously optimistic. It's a phrase I like, and it's a phrase I'm going to use again. Thank you so much for watching, listening to me waffle, talk about the games I love and why I love them. This is the place to chat, you know, ask questions, engage with everyone, with me and others in the comment section. I want this to really be fostering a positive place, a little positive corner of the internet. So thank you so much for watching again, and I will see you on the next one. Have a good one.